Good evening, Titans. And tonight we're going to continue with lesson 10.1 and talk about one of the other objectives that we needed to be able to do for this lesson, which is to find the vertex of a quadratic equation when it's not given to us in vertex form. And we're going to do this by, first, if we're given this equation, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 5, we're going to find the zeros of this function by factoring it. So remember, to find the zeros, we're going to take x squared minus 6x plus 5 and set it equal to 0. And now we're going to put it into factored form. And if we do this, we get x minus 5 and x minus 1, because those are the two factors of a positive 5 that add up to a negative 6. And then if you recall, we set each of those factors equal to 0. And then we solve. And so we get x equals 5 and x equals 1. And so those are the zeros of my parabola, which means when I graph my parabola, it's going to cross the x-axis at 1 and 5. So it's going to cross there and there. And again, because the x squared term in front of it is just a positive 1, it's a normal looking parabola. Well, what we want to find out is, where does this vertex lie? Well, first thing we have to do is determine the line of symmetry. And if you think about this, if one of the zeros is 1 and the other 0 is 5, the line of symmetry has to lie halfway between them. Well, what's halfway between 1 and 5? Well, we can do this by using the midpoint, or just adding the two x coordinates, 1 plus 5, and then dividing that by 2. So we get 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my x coordinate, or my line of symmetry, or whatever we want to call it in this case, has to go through at 3, which means my x coordinate on my vertex is 3, and now I have to find the y coordinate to pair with that. And I'm going to do that by substituting this value of x into the original function. So I have y equals, I have 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 5. So now 3 squared is 9 minus 18 plus 5. So I have negative 9 plus 5 is a negative 4. So now my vertex is 3, negative 4. And again, if I know my vertex, then I could write my equation in vertex form, which would be y equals x minus 3, quantity squared, then minus 4. And now I've written it in vertex form. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. So for this first one, we're going to go ahead and we have to find the zeros. So we're going to go 0 equals, and we're going to put this in factored form. And what factors of a negative 15 add up to a negative 2 are negative 5 and a positive 3. So then I set each of those factors equal to 0. And I get x equals 5 and x equals a negative 3. So again, if those are my two zeros, then my line of symmetry has to lie halfway between them. So now I'm going to add those and divide by 2, which gives me 2 divided by 2 for a positive 1. So my x must equal 1. So now I have my x coordinate of 1. Now I find the y coordinate pairs with it by substituting it back into the original. So I have 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 15. 1 squared is 1 minus 2 minus 15. So that will be 1 comma negative 16 would be my vertex for that. And if I wanted to write this into vertex form, then it would be y equals, again, since this is a positive 1, it's x minus 1 quantity squared, then minus 16. And now we've written it in vertex form. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing with example 2 here. So I'm going to erase this one and show us how we do that with this next one. All right. So again, we have to find the zeros. So we have 0 equals, we have x plus 7 times x minus 2. And now I'm going to set x plus 7 equal to 0, x minus 2 equal to 0. And I get x equals a negative 7 and x equals 2. And those are my zeros. So again, now my line of symmetry has to lie halfway between. So I have to take negative 7 plus 2, divide that by 2, so I get negative 5 over 2, or a negative 2.5 as my x coordinate. So now I have to use that to find the y coordinate that pairs with that. And I substitute it into here. So I have a negative 2.5 squared, which is a positive 6.25. Then I have 5 times a negative 2.5, which is going to be a negative 12.5. And now I have a negative 6.25 minus 14 will be a negative 20.2, or excuse me, negative 20.25. And then there's my vertex for that one. And as you can see, when the two x or the two zeros are one's odd and one's even, you're going to have a decimal value as your x coordinate, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But again, you're using a calculator to go ahead and find those. But it does create a little bit more of a hassle with that. And yes, we could write this in vertex form, but in this case, let's just determine the vertex is negative 2.5, comma, negative 20.25. And that's the skill we wanted to focus on tonight, and we'll mess with that tomorrow in class.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.